Now let me show you how I do this.
We are one by one. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Adam.
And this is our masterclass. In terms of processing on the bass, I just have a kickstart, Nicky Romero, and a EQ just to get rid of some of the highs so it doesn't clash with the lead. So this offbeat one hits on the stab, just to give the stab offbeat cool vibe. I'll play it for you quickly. So then we have the open hi-hats. They, in the first part of the drop, they come in when the vocal's playing just to give more rhythm to the vocal, and then it plays through the whole drop. In terms of processing on them, that's not the right one, this one. EQ, plain and simple, get rid of the lows, nothing else to it. And that is also Cashmere. Then we have the actual break, which mainly evolves around the main chords. So that was the first thing I wrote for the break. And I'll show you them. I think it's also a Nexus. I used a lot of Nexus in this track. So they sound like this. Very emotional, very dreamy. The actual chords themselves are really not that fancy. The only thing that makes them a bit posh is that I use a technique called open voicing, meaning that you take some of the notes in the chords and put them in a different octave. So normally the chords would be down here, like your triad, your normal triad chords, but I just put them up an octave. The only fancy chord is this little baby here, and he's known as a sus4, suspended, I think it's suspended 4 chord. And what that means is if you have the first, third and the fifth as your triad, you move the third and put it to either the fourth or the second. And so that would be a sus2 or a sus4. And in this case I did a sus4. So what you can do with that is that you have a repeat chord, but it gives it a little bit different vibes. So in here, this is actually the same chord, but then having that sus4 gives a little variation, so you get this effect. Pretty cool. So those are the I'll show you the actual preset. Yep, just Essential from EDM3. I think I turned down the cutoff a bit. And in processing for that, just an EQ and a fruity limiter for the sidechain, which comes in later. So that's the chords. Then we have the bass, because you always want bass. And that just follows the chord progression, and it sounds like this. Pretty cool. So it's a Reese bass from Silent. It's actually in the stock bank. If you go to number 2, Reese bass 2, and all I did to it was add an extra sine wave 2 octaves down because the original didn't really have enough low end. So I just added that, and in terms of processing on that, no EQ, just a fruity limiter for when the kick comes in later for sidechain. So that's pretty much it. So then you have the chords in the bass, which sound like this. emotional, very moving. I'm moved, but we need to keep the energy. This is a club track. But let's go into the master, what I have on the master chain. The first is an endless smile, which is just a reverb and delay, and I automate that in the build up so that he gets happy, and that just creates more space in the build up, and then when the drop hits, it's back to normal. Super powerful. Fruity balance, and what I do there is automate at the build up to slowly get to slowly get softer right before the drop hits again. Then in terms of the actual mastering, I have an ozone. First part is just an EQ. The reason I cut off here is because both of these ends you can't hear. So anything lower than, in this track, lower than 28 Hertz, and anything higher than, what is it, 18,000, doesn't come out, so you don't need it. You just want to make as much space as possible. Then I've got some compression. This is just squishing the track together. Everything you can do to sort of help the final limiter, because if you just throw the whole track at the final limiter without doing any compression, you're going to distort, and it's going to be really hard to get that perceived loudness, and I'll talk a little bit about that later.